Hello and welcome to another edition of Power BI Monthly Digest, this one being for the month of September, as you can imagine. I'm your host, Manuel Quintana, along with...
My name's Devin Knight.
And we are excited, as always, for another great release.
Yeah.
I'd say as a whole, there's probably one big hitting preview feature, and when we think about big hitting, it's kind of in the development and understanding of how it's done.
Right.
But there's some nice, easy, fun ones too, and that's the whole goal. Right? Hopefully they've been enjoying and seeing the videos because we're trying to bring you what we think are the immediate things.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, things that are pretty impactful right away, things that you'll get some value out of when you start to build out your solutions as well. So what do we got first?
So we're switching it up. Our traditional style is usually we start with the modeling piece, but we're actually going to start in the pretty side. We're going to start in the report visualizations piece and actually giving a small facelift to an original visual.
Yeah, so in this example, we're going to be looking at the scatter chart. So you might have used the scatter chart before, has some really cool features like a play axis.
And you can have
multiple measures in there. But they've made a change now to the scatter chart where you can actually turn it into kind of like a dot plot.
Oh, perfect. So in that regard, what we're meaning is traditionally we'd have to kind of put on the X and the Y axis those metrics, so kind of using all those various categories. But here we can now use more categorical data.
Exactly. Yeah, so let's take a look.
Perfect.
Flip over to our example that I've already kind of started here. So we've already got a data set ready to go. And in this example, we're going to go ahead and bring in our scatter chart. And in the scatter chart, what we're going to bring in is a couple things. We'll bring in quite a few fields in here. We'll start with underneath our sales territory table. I'll bring in the country. And then inside of the x-axis, we'll bring in the group and the region. And then we need some kind of metric to look at this by. So let's look underneath our sales table here. And we're going to bring in the sales amount maybe as the size of the bubble, and we'll bring in the order quantity as the y-axis. And so it creates a nice little dot plot for us here, and you can, ours here doesn't have a ton of dots, it's just the case of the data here, but you're able to interact with it. You can select and filter things just like you can before. You can also drill in. So in my case, I had multiple levels or multiple categories. I had group and region, and I can drill into the group and region here and actually see each of the regions now showing. And all those regions are using the same color because they are part of the same country in this case. So really cool interaction here now, just a different way, a different flavor of the scatter chart that you can now view as a dot plot.
One of the core strengths of the scatter plot, where you can have multiple measures and multiple metrics all together looking at it, right? That's kind of the big thing with it, where you can have that. Now, granted, we mentioned it, one of the funnest things, the most fun items for the scatter plot, is play axis. You do lose that functionality when you go this route.
You do.
But like I said, I almost like this, it's almost like a visual representation of a matrix, right? Where you have multiple categories. You got your X and your Y, your rows and your columns, and we can still have multiple points of interest represented in these individual dots, size, X, Y. There's still saturation to tinker with.
There is, yeah.
So gives you a lot of mobility in how we can display the data here.
Yeah, absolutely. I like it. I think it's a good add in here. So our next one we're going to look at now has to do with another oldie but goodie, is all around the tables and matrix. It's super simple change that they've made. One that's been requested, I know quite a bit, that I've heard requests for is super basic. I want to be able to right-click on a selection or a cell inside of a table or matrix and copy that data out.
Absolutely. It got that huge facelift about a year ago whenever the interactivity came into play with the table and matrix, which was massive. We love that, use it all the time. But yeah, now we have more interactivity with it. And if, as your users would have it, they would be looking, seeing this, and you might have those to say, I like this, let me take this, and let me just put it into something else. Drop it into an Excel spreadsheet, put it into a text file, whatever it might be. They can do that now. Nice and easy.
Let's take a look real quick. All right, so let's shift back over to our demo here. And in our example in this one, what we're going to do is I'm going to bring in a matrix. Again, you could do this in a table or a matrix. And I'm going to bring this, if I can select it right here. There we go. Bring this matrix up here, and in this one we're going to bring in, again, we'll do the group, and how about the region here, and we'll bring in the country as well. I might need to resort those, but that's okay. And it looks like it actually created another table there for me, so let's switch that around, make that into my matrix. There we go. And we'll shift those around how they're supposed to be here. There we go. All right, so what I also want to bring in and look at is some kind of an aggregate or a measure of some kind. Let's bring in the sales amount, and let's drill down to the lowest level, like so. And so what I'd like to do now is be able to actually look at a particular value here and drill deeper into it. So maybe I want to look at the United States and take all the values from the United States. Well, what you can do now is if you select it, so if you select that row that appears here, you can now right-click on that area, that cell, and go to copy, and you'll see you can copy value or copy selection. So let's talk about the difference between the two. If you do copy value, and I'll go bring open an Excel spreadsheet I have open here already, and I paste this in, it literally just copies the value that we saw a few moments ago. Nothing more than the single value, that's it. But if I were to have done copy selection, let's say, for example, I copy this, or I select this row and I select this row as well. Let's see if it'll cooperate with me here. There we go. I can multi-select those two rows, then right-click and copy again. I'll say copy selection this time. And then go back over to my Excel spreadsheet, paste that in, and not only is it going to copy in those two rows, but it also copies in the column headers here for you. So really cool interaction here that you see. Nice, easy ability to kind of copy values out if you needed to. So
and I do like how with the copy selection option, formatting's been retained here.
Right.
So literally what has been selected, we have it basically on our clipboard to do it with what we like.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. Cool. So that's it for that quick little example. Very easy one to show. Nice little interaction there.
We still have a couple more things here on the report visual side. One it's been around for a little bit on the preview side of things, but it's available now. But more functionality to it is in the theming.
Yes. Yeah, themes are great. Yeah.
Absolutely. So it falls in line with this whole idea of being able to effectively standardize your reports, right? That's going to be nice, easy organizations.
Right.
They want this nice streamlined look and feel to things. And themes accomplished that.
Yep.
Get a centralized theme file for your organization, apply it, and bam, all your visuals kind of inherit that.
Yep.
So they added some really simple things, but nice. Some pre-created ones that can easily be selected from the drop-down.
Yeah.
And also a quick access button to the themes library.
That's great. That's really great. So it's super simple. Let's take a look at this one as well. Let's flip back over. You'll see underneath my home ribbon here that we can go underneath the section here where you can switch theme. And if I select switch theme, I can then choose some of the default theme, for example. You can see I had already switched mine. But this is the default theme. You can switch to the high contrast theme if you prefer. A lot of different things you can kind of switch in between. You can see it's affecting everything on my report. And like Manuel mentioned, you can still import. So that was the previous way you had to do gallery themes, I should say. Or you can select theme gallery, and that will actually launch open the Power BI community page where you can see the gallery of themes that other people have created, and you can download that and import those themes in here. So really cool capability that's built in here now. Makes it so you can easily adjust and change the themes that you'd like. Cool.
Awesome. Just one more thing. Anything that's more ease of use, we love.
Yeah.
Now, as well, this is more of an announcement, I guess, going from preview to generally available. So you don't need to check off that little box.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I know users have to wait for that to become GA in order to leverage.
Right.
And this is a fantastic one. Also, I feel like it's in that idea of digital storytelling, how you can show off that data more effectively. Report page tooltips.
Yes. Yeah. So report page tooltips are now going GA, generally available. And it's been around for a little bit in preview, but I thought real quickly I'll just show you briefly how you can use and leverage them. I'm not going to show you how to create one from scratch, but let's take a quick peek here at how you can turn one on.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so in my example, I actually already have a report page on the bottom. You can see it's hidden. And if I go to it, you can see that this is already organized into a very small, you'll actually see if I go underneath view, I am using the page size for tooltips. So here's the actual size of what it's going to appear like. And to turn that on, just to briefly show you how you turn on to make a report page into a tooltip, you can go underneath page information and then turn on this tooltip feature.
Okay.
You'll likely also want to change the page size. There's a nice default tooltip size, or you can make your own custom one. Once you do that, you can then go to the report that you want this to pop up as a tooltip under, so page 1 here in our case, and select the visuals that you want this to be controlled under, so in this case our scatter chart. And we can go underneath the format section and select underneath tooltip. We can turn on, it's already turned on, but we'll make sure that it's actually going to use our tooltip. Right now it's not going to use it. If we hover above here, it's using the kind of default tooltip mannerisms, but we're going to change this to use the tooltip one that we just created. And now when we hover above this, you can see it actually pops open our report that we had.
And it takes advantage, basically, in effect, this is almost like leveraging the drill through filter in that whatever we're hovering over, it effectively passes those filters to this report page tooltip. I think this is one of the coolest additional features. Granted, I mean, tooltips of any sort are extremely beneficial, and I think one of the most underrated things
Oh, yes.
in Power BI.
Yeah.
It takes just whatever you put in the visual, that's your tooltip. Sure, that's great, but you can do some really awesome things if you're leveraging more metrics and showing numbers, but maybe you also want to have a textual display of what are the name of the products that account for this quantity. You can do some really great things with tooltips, and this visual element of it, I love it.
Yeah,
I love it.
It gets even better. All right, what do we got next?
So now is when we're going to transition. We have this conversation all about the visual side of things, the report view. Now we're going to move over to the modeling side. And this is where we had that kind of big hitter we were talking about early on. And it follows along what we talked about in the previous month's digest on the composite model.
Okay, yep.
The idea of having imported sources and then direct query.
In the same model, right?
And if this is the first time you're hearing about it, this is a really big change. I would recommend going back, check out our August video because it's a massive change. It's really important. And this leverages on that. Because we can now do this, we can now take, and this is, people were waiting for this because they were looking for different design approaches.
Yeah.
This is something to help with those design approaches. And it's all around aggregations.
Yeah, so aggregations, if this is a new concept to you, the concept in general has existed around in more IT-driven BI tools like analysis services.
Yes.
But you now have the ability to, in a different design pattern, so it's done a little bit differently here, where you can actually build out your own aggregations. And basically the idea here is to have pre-stored or pre-cached results. So that way, whenever someone goes to query a really large table, let's say you're dealing with a table that has billions and billions and billions of rows, obviously you don't want to bring billions and billions and billions of rows into your data model, so you might do something like direct query against that.
Yes.
If you do direct query against that, one of the downsides of direct query is you can oftentimes experience slow performance. So it's not designed for performance, it's designed more for real-time.
On the visualization of it. Yeah, because inherently what's happening when I set up a visual, I'm effectively saying, what do I want being brought back from that direct query? Which, depending on the nature of it, and usually we're creating visuals here which are summarized, aggregating there, that's the nature of it.
Yep.
That's happening and being sent across. Hence, what you're talking about, that little latency, that performance element. This is meant to offset that.
This is meant to offset that. It's meant to basically limit the number of queries that are sent to the data source using direct query. And the way that it's done is you'll actually create two tables. You'll have one being your direct query source. So this would be your billions and billions of rows.
Yep.
But then you'll also create an aggregate table. So the aggregate table is going to summarize that data in some way. So if you have billions of rows, then you're probably, let's say, for example, dealing with, let's say, sales data that has multiple transactions in a single day.
Yeah.
Well, let's say if you're having thousands of transactions a day and maybe even multiple per customer, why not roll that information up to the day level?
Yeah.
And so that way, whenever someone goes to query that table or query that information inside of Power BI, rather than having to go back to the data source and query those billions of rows, choose from a pre-aggregated and imported table to be able to bring back the results a lot faster.
And that's the key. You know, people want to go to direct query because there's so much data. They don't want to store it in memory, like within the PBX file. But that's the whole idea of this composite model. You can create something filtered, something sculpted, something that you have controlled. In this case, I want to look at this data, aggregate it in this fashion.
Right.
Customers rolled up into a day, because that's critical. That's a vital thing that we leverage within our visuals.
Right.
There's no going back to the source system. It's there. It's part of it. It accesses that fantastic tabular model, making it fast, quick, and efficient.
Yeah, so I'd say it's a little bit more of an advanced feature, but
Yeah.
it can be worth it when you're dealing with a direct query source and you have lots of data.
Absolutely.
So let's take a look.
Yep.
So in our case, in this example, we've already done a little bit of legwork for you because this could take a little time to set up and configure. So to kind of show you underneath the covers here what we've been doing, you can see we have 5 different tables right now, but there's actually one more that we've had hidden from you. If I right-click here and tell it to unhide all, you'll see there's one other one here that's internet sales ag or aggregation or aggregates. And inside that table, we've basically created a summarization table where we've rolled up data up to a higher level. And you can see that underneath our modeling or our relationship view here as well. I'm going to re-hide this now that you don't need to, well, actually I need it here in a second, so let's leave it unhidden. But you can see here that we have that same table that's at a higher granularity that has the same relationships that we're using to aggregate or roll up data. Now, it's not as simple as just importing these two tables that are very similar to each other. You actually do need to configure this new table, this aggregate table, to use aggregation.
Absolutely. Effectively define the columns that we're going to be grouping by and what type of aggregation we want to do. And that's the new area. There's this new, basically, menu that you can go to define this.
Yep.
But all these things do need to be in play. You need to, effectively, this table needs to exist in the sense of having the correct relationships.
Yep.
So as you can see, it's a mirror image of fact internet sales, just tailored down to what we know we're needing for these very common aggregations that we need.
Yeah.
So in this case, summing it up by date, customer, sales territory, we want to get the sum of order quantity and sales amount. That's that happens to be our use case in this example, right? Things are going to change, and that's why it's more advanced, because you have to think about the use case, think about what benefits you most in your organization, but now you can do it. That's the purpose of this. It's available. And
the other key thing to point out, you brought up the fact that this is now possible because of composite models. So what you meant by that is that this table is still direct query. So this is our billions, and this is our billions and billions of row table that we may need to get to whenever we need to get to the detail data.
Yeah.
But when we're doing those more aggregate queries, like you said, where we're rolling data up, we would use this imported table up top.
Yes.
Okay, so that's where the composite model comes into play. You can have both in the same model now.
And how does it know and understand that inference?
Yeah, so good question. So when we're looking at the report view, you can tell the difference between each of the tables. You can hover above them and you can see it. So this just kind of gives you the information. So you can see there this one's set up as dual, which is imported inside of a direct query model. And then all of my, not all of them, but my sales table, my other fact internet sales table is set up as a direct query. Now you can modify that by right-clicking. I think we covered this in a previous video.
Yes.
But you can right-click on a table and go to properties to change whether or not it is set up as import, dual, or direct query. So we have kind of a combination of them now. Now with that, we can now configure, let me go ahead and close that out. We can now configure our internet sales aggregate table, and we've already done this, so we're kind of going through steps we've already done. But we can right-click on that table and select Manage Aggregations, and you can see the aggregations that we've configured here. Okay. So I'll talk about what this precedence means here in a moment, but you select the table that you want to aggregate. So this is our internet sales ag table. And then you'll tell it, how are you wanting to aggregate things? So our order quantity, for example, and our sales amount need to be summed, but everything else is going to be grouped by those values.
Yep.
And our detail table that this is in reference to is our fact internet sales table. So basically, if someone goes to query the fact internet sales table and it's looking at these at an aggregated level, it's actually going to pull it from this table.
The imported one, okay.
As opposed to the direct query. So it's going to save us quite a bit of performance when it comes to querying the database.
That makes perfect sense, absolutely.
Now, there might be some cases where you have multiple tables that are managing aggregations in some cases. And so what precedence does here is it helps kind of determine an order of operations as far as which aggregation should be used first.
Gotcha.
And so you can kind of
one table like this one doing some, and maybe I have another one that's just getting some counts.
Right, exactly. So you can set up those multiple tables, set up the aggregates, and then tell it which one's most important to you.
Okay.
All right, so once you do that, you can hit apply. I haven't made any changes, so it's fine here. I'll just hit cancel. And then you'll definitely want to hide this table because you don't want your users accidentally selecting this when maybe they want to go to the detail information.
So as far as including columns within a visual, nothing really changes, does it?
No, yeah. So the experience for the user is seamless. They have no idea that this is happening. But what they will notice is that maybe a report that had poor performance before is now working much faster.
That's what we want.
One last thing to mention this, it is still in preview. Yeah. So let me show you real quickly just to remind you how to turn on preview features. You'll go up to File. And by the way, I think the next couple features we are going to show are also in preview. But you'll go under File, Options and Settings, and Options. And then underneath the Preview Feature section, let's see right here, you're going to turn on the Manage Aggregations right here. For the next two examples that we're going to talk about, a little hint into what we're going to talk about next, we're also going to talk about mIntelliSense, and we're going to talk about the get data from a PDF file. So let's talk a little bit about those here.
I've seen behind the curtain.
I've ruined it a little bit in advance here, but let's talk about the next one here.
I mean, some great things. I mean, we know in the last release there was the addition of export to PDF. I mean, the craze and the sensation around PDF. Well, then another addition to it now is there's actually a connector that you can access that you can point to a PDF file. And it, underneath the engine, there's really not much description here on how this is working, but they've designed it in such a way that it effectively looks. I think it's working a little bit similar to like the web.
Yeah, I think so too.
Where it's going through. I mean, if you have stuff in a tabular state, like we can see in this PDF that we're going to show you here, it makes it a lot easier, and you'll see how it breaks it down. But using the preview or the navigator here to make sure you're grabbing exactly what you want is going to be important.
Yeah.
Because it's looking, it's seeing this file and just saying, okay, here's something, here's something, here's something.
Right.
So it's giving you options. So you want to make sure you're picking the right element here. But it's really neat.
Yeah.
Something that traditionally is just wasn't readable by any regard. You had to convert it. Now you don't.
Let's take a look. All right, so I have, as Manuel alluded to, I have a PDF that's already open on my machine here. So you can see it's a pretty standard kind of invoice-looking item here where I can see actually multiple invoices that are maybe being sent to customers and how the value added up. And so what I want to do is I want to be able to suck in the data from this PDF into Power BI, and you can do that now. So to do that, let's go back over to Power BI, and we'll go to underneath the Get Data section, and we'll select More Data Sources. And we'll go ahead and select PDF. Again, this one is in preview or beta here. We'll go ahead and select that and hit Connect. And it will give you a little warning here that it's still under development. We understand that. And then I go select the PDF that I want to use as my data source. Here it is. Select Open. And once it pulls in, like Manuel mentioned, it's going to bring us to the Navigator pane. And again, he's right. Very similar to the Connect to Web experience. You'll see all of the regions where it found data. So it found data in the top, and then it found data a little bit lower here. This looks like the invoice information maybe I want to bring in. And it found another section in here. And then on the bottom, you can actually see the entirety of the page, all the info from that PDF that it could extract is found here. So in our case, though, we're going to go ahead and select this table 2. And we'll click Edit to bring this into the query editor, because maybe there's a little cleanup we want to do.
And it does look like we need to, and granted, this is in preview.
Yeah.
In this regard, it looks like it's picked up the data that we like, but it doesn't have our column headers in this one.
Right, yeah, it's a good point. So you can see we can pull in the data we want. Maybe I want these 3 columns here, and I remove everything else. But now I'm still going to have to go through and apply the column headers because it didn't look like it actually picked that up from the PDF. Not a big deal, but
yeah,
when you have 50 columns, it might be a big deal.
Yeah, in that example, it actually was part of the top table.
Oh, was it?
So
Okay.
So you could do some fun manipulation,
Yeah.
right? Bring in both those tables and maybe
We
just
could
do
have made
a
it work.
little append action maybe.
Yeah.
But like I said, the fact that we're connecting, it's detecting this. Like it is in preview because naturally you can have PDFs in so many different styles and
Right.
formats. So this is going to probably take a couple of evolutions on there, but once again, it's here. It's
Yep.
something that we can start to leverage, which didn't exist at all.
Yeah.
And there's lots of users out there who definitely have PDFs that they can
my
now
gosh.
just pull the, hey, give me this.
Exactly. Yeah, so really cool one. All right, what's our last one?
Well, it's great. We're here in the query editor, so it's perfect because we're going to now sneak into the back end of things again.
Okay.
We're going to deal with the mashup language.
M.
Little M
Gotcha.
action. So whereas, M it definitely starts to broach, once again, kind of moving to the advanced side. Usually when we talk about M, we say, listen, the most important thing if you're starting with Power BI is really just get familiar with at least just reading it. What does it look like? We always recommend this as you're using this awesome GUI and you're seeing all these applied steps appear. Hit the advanced editor.
Yeah, take a look at it.
Take a look what's going on because that's the code that's getting written. One thing that's been missing, it would always check our syntax and tell if it's right or wrong. That's it.
Yeah.
We have to just know what we were doing. They've added in IntelliSense.
Oh, finally.
Which is, a godsend when it comes in regards to like DAX. Because with DAX, it's fantastic. So many different DAX functions. Yeah. You haven't used them all first time. Here's what it does. Here's the syntax. It holds your hand. It follows along with you. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's great.
Now we have this in M, which I do believe it was sorely needed.
Absolutely.
Because it's different. It's not a primary thing you go to immediately to learn when it comes to Power BI, but it's extensive with how many functions you can leverage.
It is.
Let's take a gander. So once again, this is something we recommend doing at any time, just so you're familiar with it. But if you go to the advanced editor that's located within when you're in the query side, the editing side, you can already tell it looks a little different. We have a little highlighting there, but as we go and we select something, we're going to see, just as you would with any IntelliSense, as you start to type. So in the bottom here, we have this in statement, which is returning our most recent step. But when we go here and we begin to type, voila, already do we have, in this case, it's actually displaying the items within our code we've already done that relate to applied steps. So we can see there's a change type step. So by doing this, we're going to return the data at that state, the change type, which was before. That's just how we're choosing it. So that's where we're at. But, the IntelliSense, it's exactly how you would expect it to function.
Yeah.
As you start to type out, if you're in there and you want to type in some sort of transform, table.toList, if you want to just turn something to a list. Granted, a lot of this functionality is super nice, super easy in the GUI because you can just click buttons.
Yep.
But there's some of us who want to have that programmatic capability. And there's some things that you can only do when it comes programmatically. We've talked about creating parameters and parameterizing like a URL so you can do some pagination, basically looping. You can't do that by default just easily with the GUI.
It's got to be with M.
You got to dive into M, and now this is here. You can, and it's very case sensitive too.
It is.
So this is nice because it kind of safeguards you from that front.
Yeah. And this, here to your example you had a moment ago, table dot whatever, and you can see immediately the IntelliSense it's your buddy. It's here to help you. It's got everything you need. It's got nice formula templates here that pop up, so you know what you need to type in next. This is a huge improvement. So those of you that haven't played around a ton with M, take a look at the advanced editor that we looked at here. You'll be able to actually learn it a lot more now than maybe you could before, because you have that IntelliSense. And again, the IntelliSense, if you're not really familiar with that term, that's just where it kind of gives you some pre-populated functions or references to other functions that you've created, perhaps. So that kind of stores that in there, and it's a nice way to be able to reference it.
And of course, it doesn't happen often. But if I get an error when loading in data, I mean, I've had it sometimes where going to the M and fixing it there has been extremely.
That's true.
It would have been extremely more time-consuming had I just removed a bunch of my applied steps, fixed it, and then reapplied things. So you can really help out in some troubleshooting means by going to M. Like I said, just a recommendation we always give. Practice with it, learn it, and now there's a nice and much easier way. When you start to write it, this is going to be extremely beneficial.
Absolutely. Well, hey, I think that's it for today with a lot of good ones. There were some other things. Take a peek at the Power BI team blog. You'll find a few other things that were released as well. We just wanted to highlight some of our favorites here today. Again, as always, make sure you subscribe and go ahead and hit that notifications button so you're notified whenever we have new videos that are made available to you. And tell us what was your favorite thing that we talked about today. Comment below. Let us know your favorite topic out of the ones that we discussed today, and give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, or don't do anything else.
Yeah,
no,
that's it. There's only a thumbs up. That's all that exists, right? That's all that exists.
No, you can. If you don't like it, you can mash us as well. But hope you guys enjoyed it. Again, my name is Devin Knight.
Manuel Quintana, and we'll see you in a month.
Thanks a lot.